That's why who you have in your circle, folks, it's everything. Make your network big, keep your circle small.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, Jorge Valenzuela.
This is education coach Jorge Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it. We're here today with my very good friend and brother, Vernon Wright. Vernon is an education consultant, thought leader, and a really great guy. How are you?
I'm doing well.
For the audience, I've been following Brother Vernon on socials for years. We met in person about 4 years ago at TCEA in Texas, and we typically meet whenever I'm in Dallas. He's an inspirational guy, a really good guy, and I'm glad we're friends.
I want to go ahead and say this. You say that we're glad we're friends. Let me go ahead and just tell the full story, folks. Just say, let's go ahead and have the full story. Is this, if I help him, great, but I'm going to go ahead and let you all know, because that's why you come to this show, to get the full truth. This good man right here, this good brother, he blesses me. And I just want to say this real quick. Maybe in 2025, how many of you know that we had this thing called New Year's resolutions? You may have forgotten those. We'll go ahead and pick them back up. And one of them simply is this: we need to be in spaces where people lift us up and where people elevate our thinking. And I want to just say that this good brother right here, he does that for me anytime I'm in the space with him. I just came out of a couple of meetings before this podcast, and I was sharing with some people that when you're in the right room, it makes a difference. It's everything. And so I consider it to always be the right room when I'm in the presence of this gentleman right here.
I appreciate that, brother. Vernon, with over 2 decades in education, how has your approach to leadership evolved? And what are the main experiences that shape your philosophy?
Certainly it's leadership first, but really when I say leadership first, what does that mean? It simply means this: people first. And so I was coming out of one of these 2 meetings that I was in earlier before this podcast taping. I was sharing with a group of leaders that really, if we don't have a people first approach, let me say that again. If we don't have a people first approach to leading, then what do we have? What do we have, folks?
We don't have anything.
Some of you, obviously, most of us have experiences with different groups called human resources. Some other different organizations call that human capital. When you're applying for a job, you've accepted a job offer. Notice they called it human resources, not inhuman, human capital. So in other words, what is the most precious resource? It's people. And I want to say this real quick. Again, was in a group with a list of very well-known leaders. Won't go into those names, obviously, but one of the things we were talking about is this basic fact. Might want to go ahead and take this down. You might already be familiar with it, which is simply this: people join organizations, but they leave jobs because of people. Let me say that again. People join organizations, but they leave jobs because of people. Some of you might even say, Vernon, I have trauma from the way that I've been treated at different jobs, and I left different jobs because of that. So if we don't have a really good lens and perspective, I should say, of looking at the different aspects of what leadership really is, which again is people first, then what do we have? I really want to go ahead and have that as one of the driving questions as we go throughout this episode.
Whenever we're in space together, we always take it to church. And I think that's where we're about to go right now. I saw a quote today that your biggest flex shouldn't be that you're talented. Your biggest flex should be that you are coachable. Sometimes we're in spaces, we're not being poured into, we're not being coached properly, but God is still coaching, and God is still allowing things to happen in a certain way and unfold so we can become a better believer, practitioner, and better version of ourselves. I was reading Eckhart Tolle's book, a new earth. And he said, when something happens to you, don't ask yourself, why is this happening to me? Instead, ask yourself if it's beneficial. What am I supposed to give here? Because we're put here to give, not to take. And if it's not beneficial, we should ask, what am I supposed to learn from this? If you look at people that never ask themselves, what am I supposed to learn from this? They're doomed to repeat that lesson over and over again in a different space with different people until they learn it.
You speak facts, sir. That's absolutely it. Let me make a connection. And the connection there is to a business principle some of your listeners, some of your audience may be familiar with. The Japanese call the term Kaizen, Kaizen.
Break it down, brother.
In Kaizen, absolutely. Maybe once upon a time, I was a spelling bee contestant. We'll save that for another episode sometime. But Kaizen, Kaizen. And with Kaizen, basically what it means is simply this. We are lifelong learners. We are perpetually reflecting and refining, always. And so I've shared with many different people over the years, if you meet someone who says, I figured it all out, I've got a handle on what everything is, I've often told them, we always want to be respectful and honorable when we can. So you just say, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your information and knowledge with me. And bye, turn around and run away as quickly as possible, because we never figure it out. We're always lifelong learners. So to hear you echo that, that is salient, very much so salient. That's SALIENT.
Vernon, you always emphasize the importance of mentoring others. Can you share a memorable mentorship experience that significantly impacted your career?
Many years ago, I was, of course, a teacher leader in those days and was working full time. And I was also going to school working on my master's degree. And I remember sitting at a stoplight, and I was a new father, and I was overwhelmed. Some of your audience members right now may say, you know what, Vernon, I'm overwhelmed. It's right as I am right now in the situation I'm in right now. So tell me more about when you were overwhelmed. And I was overwhelmed. I was working full time. I was a brand new father. I had a brand new job. I was really on a track to go ahead and really progress in my career at that point and to go ahead and live out advancement, which is why I was doing some of these different things, because I knew that they would pay off down the road. And I was overwhelmed. I absolutely was. And so I had made up in my mind that I was going to go ahead and just quit school and go back to life as I knew it before. And my late father, I was talking to him, and I had told him of my plan. I was sitting at a stoplight. We were talking on the phone, and he told me, he said, son, it's only a season. And I said, what do you mean, Dad? Tell me about it. He said, son, you're in the middle of it. You don't see it. It's only a season. And once that season's over, son, you go on to the next phase and the next season of your life. You don't see that. I'm encouraging you as your father to stay with it, because it's only a season, and the season is going to come to an end. And can I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that was so many years ago. And can I tell you that my late father was right? And one of the lessons I learned professionally and personally is this: have the right people in your circle. Don't have the wrong folks. A whole lot of folks have a whole lot of opinions, and they have a whole lot of thoughts and theories about what they think. But as you say, good brother, where are the receipts? And so the people that are in your circle, they need to have receipts, folks. They need to know. They need to have proof that their wisdom and their guidance has been fruitful. Their wisdom and guidance has been keen, Keen, by the way. Their wisdom and their guidance has proved to be just that. It's proved to be wise, not over a day, not over a few months, not over a few years, but maybe, as it was with my late father, over decades. Those are the people that you need to have in your circle. As we often say, and my guy, Jonathan Alsheimer, he says this when he speaks. He talks about being the teacher that we wish we would have had when we were in school. I say this, take that story and I use it to encourage myself to say, I want to go ahead and be that type of mentor for someone else so they can then do what? Just enjoy the experience themselves? Oh, no.
Pay it forward.
Yeah, say it again, sir. Pay it forward.
Pay
right?
it forward.
We are designed and put on this earth to always pour into others as we are poured into ourselves.
So there's two things here. I met a brother named Shaquille when I was in high school, and we're still friends to this day. He told me a saying. It's an Arabic saying, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wusaha. He told me this in high school, which means no soul will ever be placed with a burden that it can't handle. Now, my 16-year-old mind at the time could only understand lifting weights. So Shaquille said to me, let's say you can bench 145 pounds. God will never give you more than 145. And just know that the 145, if it ever comes to that, it's a test. So I had this mindset. Whenever I would get overwhelmed before this season in my life now, I would always tell myself that. And that was my way out. But as an education consultant, we're always on the go. A lot of people don't realize that. You can't look online and think you know someone. Back in 2021, I would get overwhelmed, like you said. And although it never shifted my mindset, I would always say to myself, you asked for this. Now suck it up and go do it. Now in 2025, I just turned 50. And although I believe, God willing, I have a ways to go, technically, I'm on the other side. Technically. So I have to look at it that way. The most important thing in life are relationships, which leads me into the second piece you were talking about. The way I have survived as a man is by associating with three brothers that we see each other every week as much as we can. We're always texting, always talking. These are brothers that are smarter than me, uplift me, celebrate me. We don't joke on each other in a negative way. We remind each other about God, about our responsibilities. They pull my coat. I can honestly say I couldn't have gotten that just from reading scripture, from prayer, from hanging out with my wife or my kids, or even work. You have to associate yourself with other people. For me, it's these three guys first, then others after that. For me, it's all about relationships. First with God, first with self, the 5 people in my house, which is my wife, it's my son, my daughter, my 2 cats, and then with these brothers, and then everybody else. I have found a lot of peace, a lot of happiness, and a lot of learning because our conversations are always deep. You can tell, brother, every time you and I talk, we get deep.
Yes,
and if
sir.
you listen to this show, I don't get deep like this. Not really, but I think other people need to hear it.
Well, sir, you know what you're talking about that people overlook, and we live it every day. We live it physically, but then we also live it in a way that really is, in a sense, metaphorical. And the word is community. And I'm reminded back when I used to have an online podcast show, one of the guests that I had on was Dr. Chris Chappeton. And we talked about community, and I asked him the question. I used to obviously ask different guests different questions. And one of the questions that I would ask different guests, and I asked him, was this: what does community mean to you? And so we often think about community as that's the physical, geographic location, the proximity, the vicinity, the immediate area in which I live. And that is true. But the real question is that all? And that is not, because community is not just that. Community is also wherever those spaces are, even if they're virtual or intangible, where we have shared beliefs and shared values. And when people come together like that, I'm telling you, folks,
it's a beautiful thing.
You can't manufacture it.
You can't.
You can try to manufacture, you're not going to get it in an authentic, organic way.
There's something else. A buddy of mine, James, once told me We were watching a celebrity online, and the guy's 65 or something like that. He was drunk and he was talking a lot of junk at the bar, and he had a lot of people around him cheering him on. I don't want to say his name. My friend said to me, when you see someone like this showing up in a very negative way, this tells you that they don't have a good circle. They don't have good people around them to pull their coattails and tell them, hey, don't do that. Don't say that. Put your phone down. Our community can make or break us. It is that important.
That's why who you have in your circle, folks, it's everything. And I
Mm.
know that obviously over the course of several years, I've had the great honor and privilege as being a board member, now the vice president of a couple of different boards that I serve on. One is the Texas Wesleyan Alumni Association Board of Directors. And one of the things that I've had the great opportunity to do is to mentor several of the collegiate athletes at that university, which is my undergrad alma mater. I have a graduate alma mater that's different, American College of Education. Let's go Ace. But at my undergrad alma mater, really talking to those collegiate athletes across the different sports, football, basketball, baseball, track and field, you name it. And one of the things that I often say to them is this: make your network big, keep your circle small. Let me repeat
Mm.
that one again. That's as they would say on the streets. I'm dropping a little bit of free game. Your network big, keep your circle small. So, in other words, and you mentioned this, of course, you're speaking all the time, you're traveling all the time. I have different events and things that I speak at and different roles that I play within the community. You might even one day call me a community organizer. But so we're always meeting people. So, in other words, our network is always growing. Our network is always ever increasing and ever expanding, but we want to keep our circle of wise counsel small and trusted. Make your network big, keep your circle small. So, in other words, we're always meeting people and expanding our network, and it's ever increasing, but keep your circle small and trusted. Why is that, Vernon? Here's the reason why, and you can do both at the same time. There's several people who've lived that out. I would say, humbly submit it to you. I've tried to live that out in my own life. And it's simply this: when it comes down to it, and you really need somebody to help you, I'm talking about you really need somebody to help you. I'm talking about 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. You need a small core group of people that aren't going to judge you. They're not going to ask you 5 or 10 different questions. They're just going to say, where are you at? What do you need? And I'm on my way.
Mm.
When you really need somebody. And so that small core group of people, that's why you want your circle to be trusted and you want your circle to be legit. We will use a little slang there. You want your circle to be real legit people with a proven track record. That's why I mentioned receipts earlier, a little vernacular there. Receipts, people with a proven track record. Because when you do need somebody's help, you don't need for them to go ahead and ask you 36 different questions like a job interview. You just need for them to go ahead and help you. But let me also say this, another little free game from one of my mentors, right? You asked me about mentoring and I mentor, but I'm mentored as well. And that mentor says this: before you can be whatever it is you want to be for someone else, you must be that yourself. So if I want to go ahead and be a solid mentor for someone else, what do I need to be? I need to be a solid mentor. I need to have that codified. I need to understand what those actions are. I need to understand what those things are. Some people might call those values. I need to understand what those daily values are. And then once I start to live those out in an authentic, organic way, I can then have that impact as a mentor. Because how many of you may have met some mentors, and that looks good on a resume, but when you ask them, who have you mentored or who are you mentoring right now? People struggle to answer. I will tell you this, another little bit of free game as well. I've had people tell me at different conferences and events that I've spoken at, Vernon, I'm a great leader. I'm great. I'm great. I'm such an awesome leader. I said, oh, okay. You take people at face value. I often tell my teenage daughter, I often tell her, so you know what, we're going to treat that like a $20 bill at Walmart. And she says, what do you mean by that, Dad? And I said, well, they take a $20 bill and they hold it up to the light. You got to make sure it's a real $20 bill. And you hold it up to the light. And they don't say, okay, I'm going to treat this. This is $19. What's on the face of the bill? It's a 20. So we treat it like $20. So if you tell me you're a great leader, I'm going to treat that at face value and presume that you are a great leader. However, I am going to ask you this question that I've asked so many people over the years. Tell me about 2 or 3 people you're currently mentoring. Because every great leader, great place to take notes if you haven't already, every great leader is always mentoring someone. Why? Because that is the heart of mentoring. And if you're mentoring, you're leading. And if you're leading, you're mentoring.
And since Vernon's dropping all this game, I got one little piece of game. Your network equals your net worth. A lot of people think net worth is just about money. It's not. It's network. How many valuable people, outstanding people will vouch for you?
I hope you wrote those things down, folks. That is another example of free game. You cannot say, as a listener to this episode, that it was not full of free game.
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning. And now for a word from one of our sponsors.
Education is changing. Classrooms look different, and the future demands that our students be equipped for whatever comes their way. Educators play a huge role in helping prepare students for their futures. Defined Learning is a K-12 standards-aligned PBL solution that provides high-quality cross-curricular performance tasks across content areas such as ELA, math, science, social studies, computer science, and more. The hands-on projects are based on real-world situations and allow students to apply their learning. Education is changing. Give students the tools and experiences to recognize their futures and make an incredible impact on the world. Defined, the authority on applied learning.
We had the pleasure of listening to George this morning on project-based learning, and he shared his story that his aunt encouraged him to go into education. And she was absolutely right. He is so talented at sharing information in a way that is easy to digest and is inspiring to go back and actually implement and make change.
So my takeaway is that Mr. Valenzuela was very inspiring. He was very motivational and helped me to think about a new way of getting my teachers excited.
When I set out to do a workshop, my key deliverable is energy. And this momentum is used to make connections, inspire, educate, and ultimately transform the audience so that they're compelled to take that same energy back to their schools and communities. And although we have fun, we tackle the hard topics of today, like educational policy, pedagogy for improving curriculum and instruction, and empowering today's students by connecting our work to the needs of the workforce. So please consider Lifelong Learning Defined for your next keynote, workshop, or conference, and overall instructional and educational coaching needs. My name is George, and I hope to connect with you soon.
We would love to have you come and do some work with us and help us be a little more successful and help our students to be more successful.
I move around a lot of schools, and we're seeing a huge disconnect. A lot of teachers that have come from non-traditional pathways, especially in the past few years. And so just interactions, expectations is really the first step. All of my teachers, raise your right hand, and please repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my students. All of my administrators, all my directors, all my principals, all my coordinators, raise your hands, please, your right hand, and repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my faculty and staff. Thank you. Speaking of free game, Vernon, you appear on a lot of podcasts, and you always discuss building influence and purpose. What is one strategy that you recommend for any individual seeking to enhance their impact in education?
Two things. Number one, every individual needs to be seen, heard, and understood. They need to feel like they are. Let me go ahead and say that again. Seen, heard, and understood. They need to feel a third time, because repetition is our friend. They need to feel like they're seen, heard, and understood. The second thing is what I call, again, more free game for you folks, is what I call the big three. I've spoken to these three many times over the years and all across the country. And the three things are simply this. Number one, what are you absolutely passionate about that you're working on right now? First time I asked someone this years ago, they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wright, is this a trick question? I said, why would it be a trick question? And they said, I've never had anyone ask me that. So number one, what are you working on right now that you're absolutely passionate about, professional or personal? Number two, what impact do you think that thing can go ahead and make on your immediate organization? Whatever level that is, whether that's the family level, whether that's the team level, whether that's the building level. And then the third question I ask is this: what impact do you think that can make on the greater organization? If you're in education, that would be like a school district. Maybe that would be a region. Maybe that would even be the state level or the national level, or maybe even an international level. Those are the three big questions. But notice number one, where it starts at. What are you absolutely passionate about that you're working on right now? Why would you ask that question, Vernon? One of the books that I quoted and cited in my master's degree thesis was Drive by Daniel Pink, as in the color, Pink. Phenomenal book. And simply it says this: it talks about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. And we can have extrinsic motivation. That's great, folks. But if you don't have intrinsic motivation, you're not going to have a sustained effort, folks.
Vernon, for all the edupreneurs out there, transitioning from teacher to administrator into public speaking and educational consulting is a pretty big shift. It's not easy and not for everyone. What is one challenge others need to be aware of before they dive in?
The number one thing I often share with people, and I'm always working on this, day and night and all points in between, I am always thinking about this. I was in obviously, as I shared earlier on this episode, I was in a couple of meetings earlier today. And one of the meetings I was in, I was sharing with someone who is also very keen in this space and has a large amount of capacity development in this space. And that's simply branding. What is your brand? So I'm always thinking about, what is my brand? What do I stand for? What values do I stand for? What do I speak to? What do I live out? Some people might even refer to it as ethos, ETHOS. What is my set of core values? Some people might say your vision statement, your mission statement. I would say vision statement in terms of a working definition. Certainly not textbook, but a working definition. What's the big overarching place that I feel I want to get to, or the big overarching impact I want to make? And then the mission statement, what is it that I do every day to go ahead and ultimately fulfill what the vision statement is? And so I look at those different things because all of those things comprise your brand. And if your brand is solid, that means, and I'm going to share with you all, again, some more free game. Some more free game that I was sharing with some folks earlier today in this meeting that I was in, is whether you see Vernon Wright online and something that I wrote, used to do some blogging, used to write some articles, was a contributing author to a book as well, and do some other things in that space of writing. whether you see something in that space, whether you see me on a podcast like this, have been on many podcasts, immensely grateful to have been on so many different podcasts. Or if you would say, you know what, Vern, I actually saw you speak in person. This is one of the things I want you to say about me. When I saw Vernon in person speaking, what he was talking about was the same as what I had seen him talk about on podcasts. It was the same as what I had seen him talk about when I went back and read some of his articles from years ago and read the book that he was a contributing author to. There's alignment. And when you have alignment, folks, please hear me when I tell you this. I'm not an expert, but you know what I am? I'm somebody who aspires to be a lifelong learner because I always want to be better. Why do I want to be better? Because I want to be better at elevating people. I can't better elevate people if I can't be better myself. Just a little knowledge there. So if I have that alignment between what's in writing, what's on podcast, and what you experience or see with Vernon Wright in person, guess what you're going to say? There's alignment and there's authenticity and there's impact with this guy. And if you can say all of those things, guess what you're going to say? There's value. And if there's value, we can also go ahead and say value added. And if there's value added, that means someone would be willing to say, I want to bring that value to my organization. And that's one of the ways that you are recruited so much, sir, in the great and phenomenal work that you do, because everywhere you go, you just dropping value. Here's a little value there.
Vernon just said that he wasn't the expert on branding. I was actually going to ask you about personal branding because you talk about that in your work. So I would say he's the expert. For anybody listening to Vernon and saying, there's no way I can do what that guy's talking about. He's on a different level. He really walks that talk. And if you talk to Vernon on the phone or in person, this man doesn't swear. This man doesn't smoke cigars like I do. He doesn't do any of those things. He really walks a very straight line. So folks, you don't have to be like Vernon. If you aspire to be, that's phenomenal. But all you have to ask yourself is this: what do I want to be known for when people mention me or they hear my name or they see me? Just ask yourself that. The advice I got many moons ago when I started in central office was this: when people see you, they should think that help is on the way.
Mm-hmm.
So start there. If your aspirations and what you want to be known for is for being a big shot and for being an authority and for being all these different things that should really be anointed on someone instead of you declaring it, just say to yourself, I want to be known as a helper. And just start there, right where you are, whether it's in your district, it's in your classroom, it's in your home, it's in your church, it's in your mosque, in your temple, wherever you are. Just start there. And just remember, everyone has a personal brand, whether we realize it or not. And it's always what people think about us and what they say about us.
That's impactful. I had an opportunity back in January of this year, January of 2025, to be at an event where I actually met Martin Luther King III. And obviously we know that he is the son of the late, great MLK, Dr. MLK Jr. And I asked him, I had the opportunity to ask him a question before a room that was standing room only. I'm talking about standing room only. And I asked him, I said, talk to me about, in 2025 terms, about one of your father's most impactful quotes, which was, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And I asked him about that in 2025 and how to go ahead and energize the youth and to coalesce the youth around that. And I want to say this: some of us want to be fired up and we want to be energized, but we're not really clear on what we want to be energized about. It's like everybody, we're fired up, we're ready. What are we energized about? We don't know.
Actually, Vernon, I believe a lot of people got that piece wrong. I have learned recently that as a speaker, as a coach, as a teacher, as a father, in the various roles I'm in, my job when I'm in that role is to pour into others. Yes, when I'm reading scripture, when I'm attending my congregation, I'm being poured into. But when other people are attending my congregation, my other one,
That part.
my job is to pour into them,
Yes, sir.
not to have them pour into me and validate me. And I think a lot of people get that piece wrong.
Yes, sir. And you know why they get it wrong? And let me say this, folks.
It's what's been modeled for them.
It might require the I word. And the I word is a tough one for some folks. You might have to be, here's a new phrase for you may or may not have heard of, your audience may or may not have heard of, in the spirit of Brene Brown. You might have to be emotionally courageous because you might have to do the I word, which is introspection. And ask yourself, am I not only doing the right things, but am I doing the right things for the right reasons? Some of us have been around some people that did the right things for the wrong reasons. And as a friend of mine says, you know what, Vernon, that's performative.
And now for a word from one of our sponsors. If you're a STEM and PBL teacher like me, you're always on the lookout for new project ideas and resources. You know George does PBL, and I'm telling you, look no further than SmartLab. SmartLab really has a fresh take on STEM and PBL. I'm proud to be a partner, and they sponsor the podcast. But just don't take my word for it. Check out what other educators are saying about SmartLab.
When students enter into SmartLab, they are allowed to think outside of traditional norms.
It gives them a lot of agency. They feel empowered and important. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the SmartLab environment and the way the project process is set up.
SmartLab becomes this place where they can do those things and have the time and space to communicate better and even deal with social emotional stuff. They're having a bad day. A SmartLab's a place where we can change the pace of what they're learning to match their mental needs for the day. And that comes back tenfold later on when they want to be there and they want to learn and they want to do stuff and they feel safe and they feel like they can get the things they need.
That's one of the big benefits of being in more of a collaborative environment is it makes you have to work. It makes you have to be accountable.
Please look in this episode's show notes for a link to connect with SmartLab. In the spirit of pouring into others and given your experience in urban school districts, Vernon, what do you believe are the most pressing challenges facing educational leaders today in 2025, and how can they address them effectively?
Preparation programs and leadership talk a lot about the aspects of curriculum, running a building operations, and all of those things have their place. But I would be remiss, REMISS. I would be remiss if I did not tell you that as equally, if not more importantly, that the aspects of the human soul, spirit, and mind are first and foremost. What do you mean by that, Vernon? We just shared it a few moments ago. I heard Oprah say it many years ago. Probably wasn't Oprah that coined it, but I heard her say it many years ago. People need to be seen, heard, and understood. I'm going to say that again. Seen, heard, and understood. Seen, heard, and understood. So let me go ahead and ask you from a different perspective. What substitute is there for not being seen, not being heard, and not being understood? What substitute is there, folks? Because if you don't have that, I don't know what else you have. We could talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but we won't even go into that. But if you don't have that, where you don't feel like you're heard, you don't feel like you're seen, and you don't feel like you're understood, then what do you have, folks? If we did not have that, again, being emotionally courageous and authentic, if we didn't feel like we were being seen, we didn't feel like we were being heard, and we didn't feel like we were being understood, would we be ready for somebody to lead us? as they say, asking for a friend.
What a perfect way to end the show. Vernon, how can people contact you so they can book you to speak at your school, conference, or event?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The name is Vernon Wright, as I am known across all the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, you name it, @ The Right Leader. That's right with a W. THEWRIGHTLEADER, just as you see it there on your screen. Go to therightleader.com. You'll see so many of the different podcasts that I've been on. You'll see a part there where you can go ahead and email me, submit your request. Please do that.
In the show notes, you'll find the link to Vernon's speakers page so you can book him directly. Until next time, this is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast. Whether you're a teacher or administrator, you lead by walking alongside your students and your staff. You teach them what to do, you model for them. Let's say you're in a situation where you don't know what to do and you bring in a coach or a resource, you learn alongside them. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the second thing is this. Give your people feedback, not pushback. Whoever you push back on, whether physically or verbally, they're going to do it right back immediately. And if they're intimidated by our position, our status, they're going to do it behind our backs and ruin our programs. My guy. I want to leave you on this note. Trajectories can be changed. When I was in 10th grade, here's a snapshot of who I was in 10th grade. There's a rapper named Rakim. I'm not sure if you guys know about Rakim, but he used to say, it's not where you're from, it's where you at. And I played that on my headphones at 16 years old every day until I believed it. And I'm showing you this because I'm seeing versions of this throughout American schools. This is your reality of what you have to face. If I can do it, any kid can do it, but they have to work hard. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with Jorge Valenzuela.